Thank you. Welcome to our first board meeting of this new school year. I would like to introduce 3 student trustees who are with us this evening. First, we have Ben Cameron, who is representing Ajax and Pickering. Welcome, Ben. Then we have Gwen Hewitt, and she's representing Oshawa and Whitby. Welcome, Gwen. Lauren Edwards is representing Brock, Uxbridge, and Scugog. We welcome you as well. Thank you for joining us. And I will call this meeting to order. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and our schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the treaty territory of the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, we learn, and we live. You have an agenda in front of you. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, I'd like a motion to adopt this agenda that appears in front of you. Motion to approve the agenda. Thank you, Trustee Edwards, seconded by Trustee Templeton. All those in favor? All those in favor of approving the agenda? Thank you. We have no information items, so I will move directly to the recommended action. It is stated trustee vacancy. A letter was received from Chris Brainey on August the 31st. An email was also received from Michael Barrett on August the 31st. Both of these emails indicated residency outside of Durham, identifying that they no longer reside in our area of jurisdiction. We have received today 2 additional legal opinions. They were emailed to us this morning. The first one was provided by Nadia Timochenko from Miller Thompson. The second legal opinion came from Eric Rohr of Borden, Ladner, Gervais. We each received those legal opinions. You've had an opportunity to read them, to digest them. Any comments? Any questions? Both legal opinions were very direct. Yes, Trustee Barrett.
There, okay, it clicked in. Thank you, Chair Morton, but I would respectfully disagree that the 2 legal opinions are not necessarily as direct as you would suggest that they are, because there's a number of elements within this. First of all, I'm really disappointed on how this has come about with the board. I did not receive a single phone call, a single email before this information came forward. I don't think this is the best foot forward for our board when we're discussing a 19-year veteran on the board and just being able to send out emails and legal opinions. I think at least there should have been some communication with regards to being able to determine and ascertain how this was going to take about. We would not deal with our parents this way, and I find it a little reprehensible that somehow that this is being dealt with in this manner just to be able to put it on the agenda. I think that I would have expected to be able to have given the forewarning and a discussion, because I think a lot of this could be settled in a manner by which, if we had gotten the facts, Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. But we've gone forward with two legal opinions here. But I also have a legal opinion that suggests that these legal opinions are not correct. And the reality is, in a lawyer's world, every time you go into court, one wins and one loses, regardless. I'm not finished.
I think I would ask Council Cotter to offer his opinion, because looking at the opinions that were received today, I need to abide by those opinions because they are based on the Education Act.
And I appreciate that, Chair Morton. But I'm telling you that I had another legal opinion that gave the exact opposite, because this, as I mentioned in the email, was also dealt with OPSBA. I'm not the only individual, the only trustee across this province that is dealing with this matter. There are at least 2 trustees that I know of that have residency in their current board and are running for office in other areas. No, I'm not finished. Please don't cut me off.
Excuse me, I will go to Council Cotter now. I do want his legal opinion, please.
I appreciate, I see the legal opinions. I'm telling you, there's another legal opinion. There's another, the OPSBA opinion that said that this is not the case, because it's going to come down to a question, as Council Cotter sent out, with regards to, under the Education Act, how are you qualified to be able to continue to be able to be a trustee? And it says in 219.1, a person is qualified to be elected as a member of the district school board or school authority if the person is qualified to vote for members of that district school board or that school authority is resident in the area of jurisdiction. Well, I'll tell you, I meet both of those qualifications. I happen to have 2 residences. And you can't tell me that you can't have 2 residents, because I vote in 2 municipalities and have voted in 2 municipalities since I've owned my farm 10 years ago. I have voted for myself as a trustee, and I've also voted for trustees in Kawartha Pine Ridge, where my farm happens to reside. Under the Municipal Act, I am eligible to be able to vote twice. And if the question is, do I meet those qualifications? Can I vote for the members of the district school board in the next upcoming election? Yes, I can, because I'm a resident. I still have residency in the city of Oshawa.
Thank you, Trustee Barrett.
No.
There are people who are saying that you are no longer a trustee in our board because your residence is outside of our municipality. I will therefore go to Council Cotter for his legal opinion. Council Cotter, could you provide some guidance on this, please?
I'm happy to, through you, Chair Morton. So you do have the legal opinions which speak for themselves. I have asked Nadia Timonchenko to attend tonight in case you have any follow-up questions, and she is here, if you have any questions about her opinion. But the opinions state that, as a matter of law, once the residency eligibility requirements under the Education Act and the Municipal Elections Act are lost, the seat is, as a matter of law, vacated. So that's the opinion you've received. So I think, you know, there's a couple of issues that that you will need to deal with and that the board will need to deal with. The first one is you know, the right of Michael Barrett to participate in the meeting. So I think you know, you'll have to make a ruling on that, which you know, the members could appeal. So ultimately, I think that would be up to the majority of the board to determine that question. And then the second issue is you know, is the seat vacant? So those are the 2 issues. They're related, obviously, but I think the first question is, given the legal opinions that you've received, how do you proceed with the meeting in terms of, in particular, Michael Barrett's participation? So I think that's the first issue that the board will need to grapple with, as you flagged.
Thank you for that. So the first question, we need to determine if Michael Barrett is to sit at this table and participate in this meeting. And I see that Trustee Lundquist is raising her hand.
Thank you. I just want to be clear about this residency issue because I'm not sure that I'm as clear as I need to be, because I think it's determinative. So I'm looking at 2.2 of the Municipal Elections Act, and it says, so I agree with Trustee Barrett who read the Ed Act requirements. The residence section in this act, which applies to us, also says, for the purpose of this act, a person's residence is the permanent lodging place to which, whenever absent, he or she intends to return. And the following rules apply in determining a person's residence. 1, a person may only have one residence at a time. So I would just like someone to speak to what might on its face appear to be a conflict between the Ed Act and the Municipal Elections Act. I don't know that there is a conflict, but it does appear that way on its face, and I think it would be helpful to speak to it if someone could.
Trustee Cotter? Or, sorry, Council Cotter?
With your leave, Chair Morton, I'll ask Nadia Timonchenko to comment on that because she does address that in the opinion.
Through you, Madam Chair, I do not see them as having a conflict. I do think that those two pieces of legislation have to be read together, and the Municipal Elections Act helps define how we look at residence when we're looking at the issue of a trustee's residence for the purposes of both acts.
Thank you. So the first thing that we as trustees need to do is decide if Michael Barrett is able to participate in this meeting. Comments, questions? Then we need to be prepared to vote.
I have a question, Madam Chair. Sorry, my hand is up.
Oh, I am sorry, Trustee Forbes, I did not see that. Trustee
That's okay.
Forbes, go ahead.
Thank you. And this is just for my understanding, and I'm not trying to curb debate or exclude people. I'm just wondering, like, when we say we have, you know, are there declarations of interest, is that something that would come into play here? Or are there, you know, for the meeting, but I don't know. And I'm not saying that would preclude someone like Trustee Barrett from participating, but I think that might actually be something that we might need an opinion on.
So Trustee Forbes, am I to understand that your question is, should Michael Barrett be voting on this question? Is that correct?
No, it just, if there's a declaration of interest that should be made or is necessary, I just don't know. I've never been present at a meeting where one was made. So just for my own clarification, just so we're all on the same page in terms of how to proceed.
Council Cotter?
Thank you, and through you, Chair Morton. I think my advice would be that the conflict of interest question really asks the wrong question, because if the opinions are correct that as a matter of law, the seat is vacated, then that answers the question. But you know, to address the matter, I think we will. You know, I would suggest that you do make a ruling on Michael Barrett's participation in the discussion and the vote, and any votes that come up on this question. And then, as I say, that can always be challenged, but that would be my suggestion.
Thank you. We will call for the vote, but I see that Trustee Lundquist has a comment.
I actually have a question because I'm unclear about what's happening in some respects. And the reason I'm unclear about it is, are we confirming that we accept the legal opinion? Because if we do, then I think that by operation of law, there's a result that is necessary. I don't feel like I have any ability to vote on whether Trustee Barrett, like, I just don't understand the question that I'm being asked to vote on, frankly. I'm prepared to do something, but I need to understand what it is I'm doing, because if somebody is no longer eligible to serve by operation of law, understanding there's a debate about that or not, then they're ineligible to serve. I don't understand why that would be a vote of trustees, and I'm struggling with that conceptually, so maybe somebody can provide some direction on that, because it makes sense to me that we might be confirming that we accept those legal opinions, and then the result that flows from that, or not accepting it and then moving along. But I don't understand this concept of voting on whether, I don't understand the question, is what I'm trying to say poorly.
Well, and through you, Chair Morton, and you know, the issue was raised, so I was suggesting that the chair make a ruling on that, and then that could be the subject of an appeal and a vote. But your suggestion is also valid. One other way to get to the same issue is to have the board vote on accepting the opinion, and what would follow from that, I guess, as you say, would follow from that. So that is another way to get to the issue. We would still need, the chair at some point, I would suggest, will still need to rule on whether Michael Barrett can vote on that motion.
Taking the advice of Council Cotter, I think our first decision is, do we accept the advice of the legal counsel which we have received today? If you are accepting of those opinions, you would indicate with a green check mark. If you do not accept those opinions, please indicate with a red X. I would like to see that vote now, please, and thank you. The result of that vote is that, yes, we do accept the legal opinions received today.
Can I say a few words before I leave then? Nice words?
Yes, Michael, you do have the right to do that.
Well, this is not the ending that I anticipated, and I must admit I'm extremely disappointed. However, put me on. Put me off.
There,
Anyway,
you're
this is
on.
not the methodology by which I expected to end 19 years of contribution to the Durham School Board. And regardless of my disappointment, I want to be able to, thank everyone for their support. And as much as the elements of being able to contribute, my fingerprints in this board run deep and hard. And there are many elements within this board that, as much as you may try to be able to eliminate the fingerprints, they are here and you will discover them. But it has been an honor to be able to serve, but certainly not the methodology by which I expected to leave. So thank you. And I'll be off so you can consider the rest of your agenda. But this does set a legal precedent, because nowhere else in any school board has this ever taken place. But thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for your 19 years of service to the Durham District School Board, and you have served in many capacities. We thank you for your contributions. Trustee Lundquist, you would like to have a voice.
I would, and I appreciate it. Thank you. This is not an easy moment, and I don't want to diminish Trustee Barrett's contribution to this board in any way. And so I know that when we all exit in November, or the ones of us who are exiting, I would expect that we would be inviting him to participate in that if he would choose to. I think that that would be an appropriate thing to do in light of his longstanding contribution, and I think we should also do the same of Trustee Brainy, who has also served the board well for a significant period of time.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Trustee Lundquist. Good thinking on your part. Are there other comments? Then I would ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting. Thank you, Trustee Lundquist. Consider this motion, this meeting to be adjourned. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Standing Committee meeting of Tuesday, September 6th, 2022. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll begin with a land acknowledgement. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across the Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. Are there any conflicts of interest? Seeing none. I would like to ask if there is any objection to amending the agenda this evening to include the student trustee report. That report we will hear as information item 9A. This is a standard item on our agenda. We were not sure that the students had a report for this evening, but we're very glad that they do and looking forward to those reports. There are no community presentations, so I'm going to call on Superintendent Andrea McCauley for the Durham District School Board Mental Health and Wellbeing Action Plan. Andrea.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The purpose of this report, which begins on page 1 of tonight's agenda, is to provide information on the DDSB Mental Health and Wellbeing Action Plan. Our commitment is to enhance and protect student mental health and continually promote well-being for all staff and students. The action plan for 2022 and 2025 identifies that good mental health and well-being are connected to student success in the classroom and to thriving work environments. Additions reflected in the action plan in front of you are centering of both staff and students, as our former plan focused exclusively on student well-being, and as well the centering and importance of identity-informed and identity-affirming practices. The action plan shared this evening reflects our continued learning as a district about mental health and well-being, is succinct focus for action items framed as learn, support, and connect, and includes important flexibility as the past couple of years have shown us to be essential to be responsive to our students, our parents and caregivers, and our staff. Providing the presentation this evening is Stephanie Pellebor, mental health leader, presenting on behalf of the Mental Health Leadership Team and the Interdepartmental and School Staff Action Plan Design and Development Committee. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to share with you a little bit about the good work that is happening across the district related to the district's commitment and actions towards supporting student mental health and well-being. The Mental Health Wellbeing Action Plan we're sharing with you tonight was developed in support of alignment to the district's operational goal specific to student learning and well-being, a core district priority. The Mental Health and Wellbeing Action Plan recognizes that good mental health and well-being are foundational to student success in the classroom and to a thriving school environment. The plan helps action the DDSB's commitments towards cultivating the conditions for healthy learning and working environments where all our students and staff feel they are welcome, where students in particular are engaged in school life, both in their classroom learning and the larger school, and where they know that they're valued, they're seen and heard, where their identities are affirmed, where they belong, they know that they matter, and they're connected to adults that care and are present to their lived realities. The process and the direction set out in the plan came about through the work of an interdepartmental and multidisciplinary team that relied heavily on feedback-informed development to establish key actions for the plan, ensuring that the planning in the plan itself was responsive to student, staff, and system needs, that it was student and staff-centered, identity-affirming, differentiated, and responsive, that it was implementation-sensitive, with attention paid to the plan being scalable and sustainable, and that it was aligned to system commitments and priorities, grounded in the foundational anchors of Indigenous rights, human rights, equity, and inclusion. And if we could summarize the plan and the actions to be taken as a system, the plan action priorities are to learn, to support, and to connect. We believe it is important to learn how we can support the everyday mental health and well-being of our students and staff. And we are committed to providing for our students and staff inclusive, identity-affirming, culturally relevant supports as needed. And we strive to connect all students and staff to, from, and through those pathways of support. The plan in its high-level form reflects the interactive and dynamic conversations and the development process engaged in by the interdepartmental and multidisciplinary design and development team. It provides a template for conversations to happen across the system, for key priorities to be broken down into specific action plans that will be informed, developed, revised, and monitored as a result of these critical conversations, and intentional listening to students, to families, to staff, and community partners, leading to our collective learning and unlearning as a district. This action plan has a foundation in the understanding that school and system level mental health approaches are not standalone actions, nor are they practices designed only to respond to individual needs. Rather, healthy and advanced school and work communities seek to embed universal and individual practices throughout all aspects of the learning and working environments. This plan invites us to think deeply, broadly, and inclusively with respect to the interplay of a variety of strategies and approaches that both support positive mental health and respond to concerns. We're committed to developing the plan through feedback-informed processes, and the plan will be held accountable to feedback-informed input from key stakeholders, those doing the work, those invested in the outcome of the work, and those in receipt of the work. We're talking about our students, our families, our parents, our staff, and our community, all in order to ensure the plan is informed and held accountable for what the system truly needs and what our students truly need. So what does this look like in practice in our schools, in front of our students? The three action areas: learn, support, connect. When we talk about learn, we're talking about learning to understand, with focused learning around mental health literacy and the everyday conditions that support mental health and well-being. This learning is about identity-informed, engaged learning, increasing our collective understanding of what is well-being and what is mental health, and what fosters, what promotes, and what bolsters mental health and well-being, what goes into the everyday practices as we lead a system, as we lead schools, as we teach in classroom, and we engage and interact with each and every day with our students and with each other, ensuring our students experience caring adults that recognize their lived experiences. Support is to strengthen and focused on staff skill building for student support, as well as mental health supports and services. This priority action involves providing our students and staff inclusive, identity-affirming, culturally relevant supports and services as needed. And where there's coordinated mental health prevention, there's early intervention programming, upskilling, and resourcing that's inclusive of all students and staff and reflect our commitments as a district. And finally, connect to pathways is focused on ensuring and strengthening strong pathways to, from, and through mental health supports, with a focus on the right supports and services at the right time, reflective of strengthening collaboration with students and parents and staff and community partners to ensure that we offer supports that are family-driven and involve a youth-guided planning process that truly meets the needs. I'd like to share one concrete example of learn. Mental health literacy includes student learning about mental health. And the 5W resource was developed by a working group of the 2021-22 DDSB Student Senate to encourage students to understand mental health and learn to take care of their mental health and well-being. This is a handbook that was created by students for students, and becomes both a resource for our students as well as our staff in supporting the mental health and well-being of students, for increasing our collective mental health literacy, and for establishing ways to create and enhance the everyday conditions that support mental health and well-being. And finally, this plan is anchored in our commitments to Indigenous rights, human rights, and equity. It's also anchored in trauma-informed practices where relationship and engagement are key enablers to successful implementation. These key drivers, Indigenous rights, human rights, equity, trauma-informed practice, and relationships, will be the guiding framework. It will hold us accountable to how we focus on promoting mental health and well-being for all students and staff, and ensuring that our approaches are beneficial to all and every student and staff, while building on and towards supporting those that might need more. It's not a stage plan. We don't learn first, then support, then connect, but it's rather a dynamic, multi-directional, interactive plan, building into and onto each other, dependent on each other. This plan will provide a district template for collective commitment and a shared responsibility for creating a safe, welcoming, inclusive, and respectful and responsive school and work environment that promotes the well-being for all students and staff. This is key because the education system plays an important role in contributing to enhanced positive mental health in children and youth. Promoting and supporting positive mental health and welcoming, caring, respectful, inclusive, safe learning environments is vital to ensuring children and youth remain resilient, that they can learn to be the best of who they are and achieve success in ways that matter to them and build those important, healthy, supportive relationships. This is our shared responsibility. Thank you for letting me present this plan to you tonight.
Thank you so much. We are proud of the plan presented this evening and look forward to bringing updates as we continue to shift our practices through learning and actions as we learn, support, and connect mental health and well-being for our students and our staff. Stephanie and I are happy to take any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the team tonight? Trustee Lundquist.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I think you're on, though, and I'm not. Oh, no, I am too. We're all talking at once.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be fast since I have it anyway. I appreciate this. One of the things that I wonder about, though, is are we extending this? It talks about with educators, and I assume that means educational staff, but to other staff in the schools as well, because very often it's a kind word from a custodial staff or a kind word from secretarial staff in the office. I'm sure you're not called that, and I'm sorry. Support staff or administrative staff in the office, that kind of thing. And I think sometimes we get stuck in the idea that only educators are a part of mental health in schools, and I'm hoping we're doing something more expansive than that.
Stephanie, did you want to address that?
Absolutely, I can. Thank you. That's a really good question. And this plan actually does. I think when we talk about it being inclusive, that's inclusive of every single staff member, whether they're the staff member that house the education center, whether it's the, even our bus drivers, it's the folks that welcome kids into the front building. The responsibility of mental health and well-being is the responsibility of every staff addressing every student and family. So I think this is a comprehensive plan, and I appreciate the question because all of us are included in this.
Trustee Lundquist?
I'm talking for no reason again. I appreciate that entirely. It makes a ton of sense. I have to admit, I'm worried about this a little bit. Not the plan itself, which I think looks broad and comprehensive as it's going to need to be, but just the demand that I expect will be out there in light of, well, in light of what I've seen, frankly, in my own home and with teenagers following, I don't want to say following the pandemic because it's not over, but in light of the challenges that we've had in the last couple of years. So do we have enough, I guess is my question, do we have enough resources to actually make this meaningful to all of the kids in the system? Because there's going to be just, I think, a absurd demand for this kind of thing, and I'm worried that it's not going to be enough.
Superintendent McCauley.
Thank you, and thank you for the question and the care for students. The first comment I would make, just building on what Stephanie shared, is that it's reciprocal as well. So we know that all staff in the district support student mental health and well-being, and the important reciprocal to that is the work with people and culture to support the mental health and well-being of all staff, and just the assurance that those considerations include full scope of staff across all departments and schools as well. To your question about pressures for support, I think Stephanie and I would both agree, along with our colleagues who lead this work, that we are seeing increased demands and a change in the type of services requested as well. So part of what the teams are engaging in as they look at how they support students is how do we shift some of our practices, which have traditionally been one-to-one service, which I think is really, really important where it needs to be. But we're continuing this year to wedge open that consideration and implementation of group as well, for two reasons. One is that quite often peers have incredible recommendations and shared experience with peers when led by regulated health professionals in those conversations. So where we're opening groups, we make sure that there's two regulated health professionals leading that group so that there's peer support for the leaders and the facilitators of those conversations. One can step away if a youth or child needs to step away and protective. And so we're broadening that. We're looking at how to amend Be Me to reach more students as well. The Black Excellence Made Evidence that we brought forward to you last year. And then it's in conversation with our community partners as well, as some of the significant wait lists open. So we're proud that effective this week as well, we have an additional Growth Program class with Ontario Shores. Ontario Shores noted the need locally to support youth with eating disorders and have opened an outpatient program at Ontario Shores, and we've partnered with a classroom through our ECPP Growth Program, which makes 5 with that partner and 50 composite programs regionally. So we're working on it, but certainly I would say there's a pressure point. But to your point, what would be enough would always be an open-ended question. So we're really fortunate for the resources we have. Many times I think we look at where services are embedded across the departments as we look at Tier 1 strategies, such as the work of Superintendent Crosdale's team, fostering positive school climates and how that's a resiliency factor, all the way through to working with our community partners, and where we sit in the middle for mental health services. So I think it's a really complex question to answer because the needs of our kids are really complex and our families. But do we have some excellent professionals doing the work? Yes. And have we shifted to be a learning organization to shift those practices? Yes. So I think we need to continue to amend our model and get the model fitting our kids in order to answer your question in terms of do we have enough? We're still answering, are we doing the right match to our kids as their needs have shifted? And I think that's an important question for us to continue to dive in first in order to effectively and with efficiency and care answer the latter question.
Superintendent McCauley, would you mind adding, for the benefit of the trustees as well, a little bit about the transition plan in terms of specific thinking of when students are returning right now to schools, the work that you and others are doing in that area?
Thank you so much. So in Inclusive Student Services, we always sit across special education and mental health, and for many of our students where those 2 points intersect on their accommodation needs and their mental health and well-being. So just a few examples that are in our schools currently this week with all of our kids welcome back. Some of our schools have received additional 8 weeks of educational assistant funding where we see a number of transitions, either volume of students returning from DDSB at home into in-person learning, I was speaking with a student this morning who said, I haven't been here in 2 years, but I have some feelings. And so I was able, even just in a 2-3 minute conversation, go from the glad to see my friends to I'm really worried because I haven't shared space. And that conversation was mirrored in a conversation that I'd had about half an hour earlier with an educational assistant who ironically had said the exact same thing. I haven't been in a school for 2 years. I have lots of feelings, but I know I'm excited to be here. There's just some stuff on the side of that. And so we wanted to bolster the transition support to just give room for sitting in some conversations. Staff will often say to us, and with Devika, we've moved from connection before curriculum to connection through curriculum, and this year we talked to our facilitators about connection is the curriculum. So we really wanted to have some time to sit in that space. We've added, with appreciation to trustees and the approval of the budget, the child and youth support worker role is now permanent within the DDSB, which is fantastic, and Stephanie's leading that team. Looking at social emotional learning and the placements that those 7 workers are going into first, strategically picked based on community need and volume of change as well. And then conversations. So again, with appreciation to the trustees, any positions within psychological services and social work that had been temporarily funded during COVID, made permanent for this year, which not only just the who and the how many in that role, but also the who, because it gave us access to professionals coming and committing to district with vast experience, day treatment, group home, healthcare settings, as well as other districts. And so just in those conversations and planning with schools, we've asked to go slow, to kind of pace conversations and embrace students and staff where they are in reentering, recognizing that in both those cohorts, we have individuals who are noting the change in COVID for this fall, but also those that have not been in buildings since March 2020 and the different feelings that brings. So just trying to layer, but we'll be doing a lot of listening in the next 2-3 weeks and making adjustments as a ISS leadership team to move and reconfigure our supports where there's emergent needs that we haven't been able to anticipate, noting that there will always be those.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you.
I'm just going to go to Chair Morton and then to Trustee Lowry. And then I believe we have a question from Student Trustee Ben Cameron. So to you, Chair Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Thatcher. I want to thank Stephanie, I want to thank Andrea for all the work that you do for the mental health and well-being of our students and our staff. Mental health and well-being has always been key, but with the pandemic, it has become even more of a focus. So I'm definitely extremely appreciative of all the work that you are doing. I also want to mention that our first mental health strategic plan was developed in 2013. It was a 5-year plan, and much effort went into devising that strategic plan. But at the same time, we established the Mental Health Advisory Committee. And that committee was made up of staff members, senior staff, parents. By 2020, we were even including students in that advisory group. And I thoroughly enjoyed participating in that mental health advisory. The last meeting was March 2020 when we received the announcement that our schools were going to close down. That will always stay in my memory. So I hope that in the future we can consider again having that advisory committee where we can participate and have a voice for the mental health and well-being of our students and our staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Morton. Trustee Lowry.
Thank you, through you. An excellent report, and I thank you for that. But one thing did jump out at me, and it made me think about the statistics that I don't have on me about the drastic increase in suicide with our young people and all the mental health concerns that have come out of the pandemic, and certainly that predated the pandemic. And at the bottom of the first page, it mentions, with the assistance of professionals and departments with mental health expertise, this framework will support the few students and staff who require more intensive intervention. I was curious why the words "the few." When do we have stats to back that up, that there's only a few that are going to require more intensive intervention, or what is the framework for that?
Thank you for the question. The all-some few refers to the mental health pyramid, so what we would have in terms of tiers of intervention, because I certainly agree with you that the few has become an increasing number for us, but within the all-some few, it tiers from our 75,000 students and proactive practices such as the social emotional learning in classrooms, through to the some that may need temporary support or coaching, through to the few that require more intensive, just on a percentage of scale in terms of the number of students. But Stephanie would be able to speak to it from a clinical perspective.
I appreciate that. And I just want to reinforce what Superintendent McCauley is saying. It's a frame of taking a look at how needs present themselves. Every single one of us on this call, every student that calls DDSB at home, has mental health. So we all have mental health. And then there are some students that do need more additional targeted support. And then there are a few students that do need more targeted intensive. And so when we think about that, we know the stats for students that may either be living with a mental health challenge or experienced a mental health challenge in their lifetime is 1 in 5. Of those 1 in 5, the rates of suicide are such that it's 1 in 5. And so when we think about the few, that's where that's coming from. And part of the plan does take a look at how we can shore up our staff to support those few students that have more intensive need, which not only includes shoring our staff up, but strengthening our partnership with community-based mental health agencies and support partners in the community that can walk alongside our students during those times.
If I may, I appreciate that very much. As the mother of a child who died by suicide, I would suggest that anyone reading this may think, well, if there's only a few, then maybe that's not me. So I would suggest that you take out the word, just say support the students and staff who require more intense help.
Thank you, Trustee Lowry. And I'd just like to add that this is an excellent and comprehensive report, as mentioned by Trustee Lundquist, that we should consider making sure that we have all the necessary data. I think that's an important word going forward that we're hearing a lot about, and that students who are happy are successful. I'd like to go to student trustee Ben Cameron. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. This is really top of mind for me because it's top of mind for students. But I'm very happy that staff are also included in this report. A big part of addressing mental health challenges, I think, is addressing awareness of the different supports that are out there for students. Because I know that they're out there, but I don't know that students know that they're out there. And so I was just wondering how this was included in the report, and specifically if it was a part of the action items or priority items under connecting through providing professional development and consultation processes that ensure clear understanding of protocols and pathways. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Stephanie, do you want to speak to that?
Again, yes, thank you. I appreciate that reflection, and part of the plan can answer that question in multiple ways. One is that part of mental health literacy is being aware of what is mental health, and it's also creating the conditions that it's okay not to be okay, and that we create a help-seeking environment where people are invited to talk to folks that they trust about what's going on for them when they're not okay. And the second part of the plan is the concept of those caring adults that surround that student that creates the condition for that outreach and that asking for help to happen. And then the third place is having those strong circle of support and those pathways for students that may need support to know who to go and for those caring adults to know who to reach out to within the system that can provide supports for those students. So I think the answer is multi-layered, and the plan hopefully will be responsive to students in creating the conditions for them to understand their mental health, to know that it's okay not to be okay, and to have a caring adult to walk alongside them and ensure that they get the right supports at the right time as they need them.
See, there are no further questions, so I'll move on in the agenda to item 7 and to go to Director Marsh for the Director's update.
Thank you. Good evening. We started very intentionally for the first report of the school year of 2022-2023 with the mental health update and the sharing of the action plan, understanding the importance when we talk about children learning and child engagement, that mental health and healthy mental health plays a role in it, and when there are mental health challenges, ensuring that we are being responsive. And so this is something that we have focused with our schools in terms of the importance of creating that sense of well-being for students and staff. We are thrilled that the academic year is off once again, and to be welcoming so many students back to the Durham District School Board. Over the summer, we've had an incredibly busy summer, and we will bring forward a report to you in terms of all the summer programs that we're running, but also want to acknowledge the many staff who were working through the summer to get ready for this return of school this year, and thank them for all of the work that they've done, especially in facilities and whatnot. In terms of the update, you know that this day contains many emotions for both students and staff, from excitement and can't wait to get back to perhaps some reservations, some anxiety, and that's one of the reasons why in the budget process last year we did acknowledge in particular the importance of funding the transition time to really ensure that students who are having some misgivings or some stress related to the return to school for them this year, that we have additional support prepared during that key transition time to focus on their sense of belonging and engagement, so that their minds are open and ready for the learning that will occur over the course of this year. We'll also update with you in terms of the student learning over the course of the fall. We'll bring forward a report that acknowledges and reports out on some of the data we have. I should say that we normally receive some independent data at the end of August in terms of EQAO achievement, and that we bring that forward in terms of how the district is doing from an independent perspective, understanding that's only one source of data amongst many sources of data that we have, both qualitative and quantitative internally, and that we combine all of those. However, this year that data release has been delayed, and so wanted to flag for trustees that it will probably be the end of September, early October before that report will be ready to share with you in terms of the operational reporting out of last year and how we did do. We have been recognizing that there are some patterns to the return of school, and so none of this will surprise you, but do want to update you in particular around what enrollment is looking like and our response to that enrollment. And so Superintendent Mundy is going to speak first about the increased enrollment and understanding that in some instances we're having to act sooner rather than waiting for the typical reorg that occurs at the end of September. So Superintendent Mundy, I'll turn it over to you, and then we'll proceed from there on some other reports.
Thank you, and I just want to do a bit of an update around school staff. So first of all, recruitment was very busy throughout the summer, working to add to our occasional lists. Many administrators assisted throughout the summer, and we were able to provide offers to 99 educational assistants, 69 clerical, and 62 early childhood educators. We also reached out to all our newly retired teachers, and we have 60 returning to the supply list, and I believe a few additional have also come forward. We hired 24 new permanent French teachers in March who have been placed in positions for the fall, And we continue to have some of our uncertified teachers from last year who wish to continue with the board and will be available to support in schools when the position is not picked up by a certified teacher. Happily, today was a very positive fill rate. We'll see how the week continues. We will add to our occasional teacher list once we finish our fall hiring of permanent and LTO teachers. So speaking of that, I'm very pleased with the work of our workplace and planning analysts. We've been able to really review updated and live enrollment by pulling information from PowerSchool, our new registration process, and updates that administrators are completing on Staffing Plus, and timetable completion information for secondary. With that, based on information last week, our OEP had been 52,575. Last week, PowerSchool at elementary, PowerSchool had 53,099 enrolled, and we had over 1,400 new registrations waiting in InfoSnap. So of these new registrations, we had 655 for kindergarten and 357 in primary, which speaks to the return to school this fall. Reviewing this information, we added 25 classrooms and 7 ECEs prior to the start of school to help with that enrollment pressure. We are still monitoring enrollments this week, and we'll be taking a review at the end of the week because we know there's still some pressures both in kindergarten and primary classes. With secondary, we've also seen what we believe is an increase in enrollment numbers over projections, and we have added additional staff to a few schools to ensure that they can have timetable created for the new registrations as well. We will be continuing to gather PowerSchool data this week for ongoing review to ensure that we're making appropriate staffing adjustments to meet ministry requirement, but also to ensure positive supports for student well-being and achievement. And I just have to add that I really appreciate the collaboration with our Family of Schools system leads who bring information about the schools they support, as well as our facilities and planning staff who've been essential in helping us determine and support the addition of any staffing. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Mundy. So we'll continue to monitor throughout the month of September, but when it's very obvious that the students are there physically and have arrived, and we know that the class is too large, then we do look to do some restructuring prior to the end of September. But we will continue to update you on that, and the formal report will come forward at the beginning of October. I also know that the other thing that is on people's minds is the health and safety protocols. And so I've asked Associate Director Markovsky to update you on what that looks like for this year, and then we'll move forward with the rest of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Marsh. And based on Ministry of Education communications that came in August, most health and safety measurements will remain unchanged from what was previously directed back at the end of the 21-22 school year. The COVID-19 advisory section will continue to be posted on the DDSB website and will provide a status update on self-reported confirmed cases involving a staff member or student in a school. And in addition to that, we will continue with schools notifying their communities if there are self-reported positive COVID-19 cases or results in classrooms. I'll stress again, similar to what was in place at the end of last school year, schools will continue to remain mask-friendly environments. Individuals are welcome to wear a mask if they choose to do so. And one other piece we want to highlight, last week we were informed of updates to the school and child care screening tool, which included the update revisions to the management of cases and contacts of COVID-19 in Ontario. There were a few changes that I think are worth highlighting, if I have a quick moment to do so. Removed from the guidance is the minimum isolation period of 5 or 10 days required for individuals with confirmed COVID-19. Vaccination status is no longer a factor for isolation for household members as well. New to the guidance, individuals who are feeling sick or have any new or worsening symptoms of illness, including those not listed in the screening tool, should stay home until their symptoms are improving for at least 24 hours. Asymptomatic individuals with a positive test result do not need to isolate unless symptoms develop. And finally, as an additional precaution, for a total of 10 days after any self-isolation period, so that's with COVID-19 symptoms or a positive test result, individuals and their household contacts should continue to wear a mask in all public settings, including schools, and avoid any non-essential activities where mask removal is necessary. So those are some of the highlights that came from the updated school and childcare screening tool last week. And Director Marshall, I'll turn it over to you. Those are our health and safety updates.
Thank you. So just to clarify, that provincial screener, we obviously have no influence of the direction that is provided, and we are directed through the Ministry of Education to use that provincial screener in terms of for both staff and community. So we have been working diligently to try to create as much as possible a positive and welcoming and stable welcome back for all students. 2.5 weeks ago, we met with over 300 leaders across the system to launch the year, and it was a very positive, energetic day. And I think one of the reflections many people had was that the summer had felt more rejuvenating than the previous 2 summers, because there was some sense of, I think, return to more predictable patterns of behavior, which I think allowed people to have a bit of time to rejuvenate. However, given the increase in enrollment that we are seeing, as much as we want to focus on stability and being proactive with all the hiring we've done over the summer months, there's still going to be some shifts. And in particular, one of the areas that we always see in September, however, with the number of new registrations, we may hear a little bit more, is of course about busing and routes. In the media, there have been reports in other districts of a number of canceled bus routes due to a lack of drivers being available. In our district, as you know, trustees worked through that, the changes in school times to accommodate understanding there is a labor shortage across the province. However, there were a number of delays today, and there will be some processing time in terms of all of the new registrations and ensuring that everyone is getting on a bus when they need to and where they need to. But we are happy in terms of DSTS working quite actively to respond to any of those sorts of concerns. So that does conclude the director's update. Again, just want to reinforce how thrilled and how positive the energy was in the system today of welcoming students back and looking forward to a very productive year with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Marsh. Are there any questions? And I'm seeing none. Moving on in the agenda then we have no recommended actions this evening, so I'll be moving on to item 9, information items. And I'm going to go to the student trustees. Generally, we leave it with you as to what order you present your report. So over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, we are delighted to present our first monthly student trustee report tonight. But first, we would like to introduce ourselves.
Hello, my name is Ben Cameron. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the student trustee for Pickering Ajax. I go to Dumbarton High School, and I'm in 11th grade.
And my name is Gwen Kiewit. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the student trustee for Whitby, Oshawa, so the East Region of Durham. And I go to Brooklyn High School, and I'm in 12th grade.
And hello, my name is Lauren Edwards, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the student trustee for Brock, Uxbridge, and Scugog, and I'm going into grade 12 at Uxbridge Secondary School. It is our honor to serve as this year's student trustees on behalf of the students of Durham. On that note, we understand our important role in furthering student voice and their concerns.
Madam Chair, please do not expect us to sit by and be silent. Although I cannot drive and we cannot vote, both in elections and at the board table, we will not hesitate to speak for and on behalf of students. We are looking forward to working alongside the Board of Trustees, Student Senate, and the DDSB to improve education in Durham.
This year, my co-student trustees and I plan to bridge the gap between the boardroom and the student body. We plan to thoroughly inform students of what's going on and how they can contribute to the bettering of their education experience. As well, we want to ensure that student voice is at the center of the decision-making at the board.
And we would like to wish good luck to all of our students for the upcoming school year and hope the transition back to the classroom is a smooth one. We are interested to see how students will react to their new bell times and are excited to see what this year will bring.
This concludes our report. We would love to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I do appreciate the fact that you will be actively involved in our discussions because, as you probably know, student voice is very important to Director Marsh and the Board of Trustees. Are there any questions for the student trustees this evening? Seeing none. Now moving on our agenda to item B, and I'll call on Associate Director David Wright to present the Community Use of Schools Startup. David?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Community use of schools, community use of DDSB schools was paused, as you know, from about March 2020 to the beginning of this summer, this past summer, 2022. Over that period, a number of policies and procedures have been revised, including the community use of schools policy and procedure. And as such, changes have been made to the permitting process for organizations that wish to access DDSB facilities. These changes were made to address and remove barriers to access and to ensure that all groups who align with DDSB's values had a level playing field in terms of gaining access to school spaces. Previous to the changes, organizations could maintain access to specific spaces at specific times, basically in perpetuity. We understand that the changes that have been made may displace groups that have long-standing ties to facilities, but it is important to remember that schools are public spaces and no group should feel that they are a permanent user or tenant. By revising the process, new groups can feel welcome as they connect and develop in our communities. In terms of the specifics of the changes that have been made, applications for community use permits will be reviewed 4 times per year, and the changeover times loosely align with the traditional youth sports seasons, where there are multiple interested parties in a facility for the same period of time. The applications will be reviewed through the lens of ensuring equitable access. That being said, child and youth activities will take precedence where there are multiple requests for a space. An additional benefit of shorter permit periods is being able to assess our staffing needs and our mandate to focus on supporting schools staying open during the school day versus supporting activities outside of the school hours. The changes to our community use of schools process has been communicated out to previous permit holders, and in that communication it was noted that fees for use are under review. Community use rates have been held steady for quite a number of years and are undergoing a review to ensure that dollars earmarked for education are not subsidizing community groups in the use of our schools, after hours. If any changes need to be made to the rates, suitable notification will be provided to community use applicants. That's it in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions through you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Associate Director Wright. I'll just ask then for questions, and I'll go first to Trustee Edwards. Go ahead, Donna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a few questions around the communities. I mean, I fully supported that we did need to review our policy and make the various changes to ensure that we have equitable access to our groups, in particular around, ensuring that our youth programs, our children and youth programs are served, and so forth. My questions, though, was that other than the email that was sent out to community users on July 21st, what kind of community consultation or public consultation did you do in order to change and decide to move to the 4-cycle or 3-cycle permit system that you've decided? And that's just my first question. Thank you.
And through you, Madam Chair, we did not engage in any community consultation about the changes made that I've mentioned in the report today.
All right, because I mean, I do understand programs usually do run on a cycle, and part of that is that it's not necessarily around enrollment, but it's also around for provision of fees are easier to establish that way, as well as being able to give maybe discounts around for an annual fee. The biggest issue with comments, I've received many emails around community use, and it was around the lack of notification or even consultation on the permit, the change of permit cycle. They were given a notice July 21st, and they could assign for permits on the I think it was the 26th, which 2 of those days were a weekend. The other comment I had was in that email, it also mentioned about, as said, you're doing a review of fees, and that they would be notified soon of what those changes are. When it comes to planning for many of our community groups, that left them sort of not knowing if they're going to get permits for the full year when they run a program such as Boy Scouts, Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, and so forth, and the Beavers or whatever. And then secondly is that, they do charge maybe sometimes a nominal fee because of the fact to cover some of the stuff, and they couldn't, they're sitting there going, well, this is how much it's going to be, but then we're not sure if that's going to increase. So notification, you say, as far as fees are concerned, will come when you say we'll give them ample notice. What do you mean by that?
So we're doing a review. We're not sure that prices will need to increase. User prices will need to increase. We just felt it was fair to let individuals know that after 15 years of static prices, they may see a change in rates coming in the future. I think we maybe could have done a better job putting some walls around that or explaining what sort of notification period we would give. Certainly, community permit holders would be under no obligation to continue with their permits if they were unable to afford the increase. I don't think we've finished our review yet, nor do I think we've necessarily decided on a specific period of time for notification. I would think that 1 permit cycle would likely be a reasonable amount of time, so about 4 months, to let folks know what the change in fees might be. So understand that might have caused some angst for folks that were trying to plan for fees for their user groups, for sure.
And sorry, one more sort of question. It's around data as far as have you issued permits as of yet? And then when you do issue those permits, how do you plan to basically analyze sort of your goals of increasing permits and specifically that type of groups around our marginalized groups, or ensuring accessibility and equitable access to our spaces? So what kind of data are you going to collect, and how are you going to report it?
Yeah, excellent questions. I mean, we're just in the infancy in terms of reopening the community use portal to the community for this first quarter. So I think the intention is to historically see what information the system collects and do a little bit of a review. And there actually was an intention to bring a community use report later in the fall with some data on historical community use patterns. I think we'll start with the number of distinct groups and a general sense of the age groups they serve. I'm honestly not sure how deep we're going to be able to go with the current system, and so we have discussed this with the senior team about how we ensure that the barriers that we're saying we're trying to remove are actually removed in terms of we've communicated, for example, we've communicated to previous permit holders, but how are we sure that all community users or potential community users are aware that that this is even an opportunity that they might avail themselves of. So I do think we have a little bit of work to do. I do think that this will be potentially evolving in terms of our process, and I do think that to get Any data that we could trend or rely on or make decisions on will need to accumulate over a period of time. So our executive lead, Sir Janik, suggested that we get in touch with the assessment department, Chris Conley, and discuss with him what data makes sense to collect through this process.
And, sorry, have you issued any permits as of yet?
It's a great question, and I'm not sure if Head of Facility Services, Lisa Bianca, is online or not. She said she'd join us for this. And through you, Madam Chair, if I may. Lisa, can we ask you that question? Have we issued any permits for the September to December period?
Certainly we have. Thank you, and thank you, Associate Director Wright. We have begun to issue permits. The organizations that offer programs for child and youth are in process and have been processed to date. And then as soon as we are fully through those permits, I believe we are close, then we will begin to work on the other adult organizations that have applied for positions. So yes, permits are being issued, and we're continuing to do so. I can gather that, we'll gather the actual information and the rate at which we're able to release them for that following report.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Trustee Lundquist and then to Student Trustee Ben Cameron. Go ahead, Nikki.
Thank you, Chair Thatcher. I just have one observation, I think, and one question. The observation is, I think it's a good idea to revisit a policy to ensure that we have sort of equitable access opportunities. So I appreciate that. And I perhaps should have recognized this sooner than today and did not, but I'm going to make an observation really based on what Trustee Edwards has said, because she's right about this. Most people aren't looking for a three-month permit or a 4-month permit. They're one-year programs. And that's true of a lot of children's activities. It's true of almost every activity I can think of that would be done in a school. So like a brownie program or I can't think of anything suddenly, but even athletic programs for kids, like I'm struggling to see how this makes sense, to be honest. So like I agree, like lottery, revisiting, whatever, that makes a ton of sense. But the time frame, I'm not sure makes sense. I don't imagine that most of our schools are used a lot in the summer, so we're talking about a 10-month period, unless I'm wrong about that, and I'm delighted to. Well, I'm not delighted when people tell me I'm wrong, but I accept when people tell me I'm wrong. But it seems to me that that actually might be a barrier, this like 3 months, because you're going to be looking for somewhere where you can make sure that that program is offered all year, because you generally are. I've never paid for something on a monthly basis for my child, to be blunt. I've always paid on an annual basis. So I think there's some potential disconnect between this policy and the way space is used. I don't know if that's a question or an observation or a cranky comment, but it's important, I think.
May I respond quickly, Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Associate Director Wright.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments, appreciate the feedback with all sincerity. Now I forgot what I was going to say. Summer. Thank you very much. Yeah, so the seasons are set up approximately September to December, January through April or May, and then there's a 2-month period to end the school year. May, June, July, and August are open. We do have community use activities in our schools 12 months a year. Thank you.
Chair Thatcher, do you mind if I just add?
Please go ahead, Director Marsh.
Thank you. Just to echo Associate Director Wright's comments, we do appreciate the feedback for sure. You may recall when we revised the policy last year, we did talk about the idea that permanent holders would experience some change. And so as we work our way through the implementation of policy, this feedback's valuable for us in terms of adjusting some of the operational pieces. I think one of our focal points this year definitely was making sure, given the labor shortage, that we continue to prioritize children and youth activities. And so providing lots of opportunities in terms of groups that may not be ready in September but we'll be ready for, we based it on the seasons in terms of athletics, that there may be that possibility. So in addition to bringing forward the report that we had planned on bringing forward in the fall, we can also look at analysis over the course of this year to see how we're doing as we make our way out of the pandemic and our schools open up fully again. And perhaps that timing of the quarterly may change as we get a sense of the demands out there, understanding the feedback that's coming forward. Thank you.
Trustee Lundquist.
Thank you. I just want to say I appreciate you appreciating my question. But really, I wasn't trying to be difficult, and I wasn't thinking about fields in the summer and that kind of thing, because that makes a ton of sense. So I appreciate that there's opportunity to revisit some of this, because I do think just because you've had a permit doesn't mean you should always have a permit. I agree that will leave out all kinds of people who have not had access. But I would be, I mean, I won't be here, but as a member of the public, I would be interested to know if this makes sense on a go-forward basis, because I do think there's some room there to fill that gap a little bit that Donna has referenced. Thank you.
I think that I agree with that. Just because we've always done something a certain way doesn't mean we have to continue to do it. I do think, though, as I think has been mentioned, that consultation is important, and that when we do change programs in this way, that we carefully monitor them and then modify as needed. And that, of course, is based on analysis and data. I'm going to go to Superintendent Ben Cameron. Go ahead, Ben. Superintendent, I've already promoted you. It's based on that email you sent me, really. Student trustee.
Thank you. On page 9, it talks about the availability of custodial support to use the community or the facilities, and I'm wondering how big of an impact this will have on the community's access to facilities. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. I'll start, and then if I'm missing anything, I'll ask my friend Lisa to help out. We've done a significant amount of hiring in our custodial department over the last year to ensure we're able to support the enhanced cleaning that we took on to ensure schools can remain safe, healthy places and remain open. We think that this is putting us in pretty good stead to support community use of schools, because whenever there are users in our schools, we do need staff on site. We didn't open community use up until the start of the summer, just out of an abundance of caution to make sure that our supports and resources were dedicated towards keeping schools open during the day for students. We are optimistic that with the hiring we did last year, we will be able to continuously support community use going forward. But if it's ever a question, keeping day schools open for students will be our priority. Lisa, did I miss anything?
Thank you. No, I fully agree with that. And also, we are well positioned right now. What none of us knows is what the fall will bring. And, that's always the big unknown. So, we anticipate everything will be fine, but we do need that little bit of a safety net just to make sure that our available custodial hours keep schools open for regular day school and learning. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I see there are no further questions.
One other.
Oh, another. Trustee Edwards, back to you.
Sorry, just one other comment. I actually appreciate Student Trustee Ben Cameron's comment and your response, because our community is, and I do recognize that, our students come first in ensuring that our schools are keeping open. But I just want to point out, we just had a presentation about mental health. Our communities have suffered as well, not having access. Many of our community groups, and I can think of many of the groups that my own children have or continue to participate within their schools, and they appreciate having the opportunity to have those programs in the schools. It's the only programs that some of our constituents and some of our adults, especially our adults with disabilities, have been able to have. That's their socialization when they go to these groups. So it's really important keeping our custodians very healthy and happy, but also to ensure that we support those because they have suffered truly through COVID as well, not having access to those recreational and social programs as well. So I'd like to see them continue as much as possible, recognizing our students come first. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Edwards. Moving on then to item C, 9C, and I'll call on Superintendent Heather Mundy to share the DDSB accessibility plan. Heather.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Thatcher. I'm pleased to have Lisa Coppins here this evening as well, Senior Manager of People and Culture and Co-Chair of the Accessibility Working Group, to share the DDSB Accessibility Plan for 2022 to 2026. In December 2021, the DDSB had the opportunity to participate in the Leading Equitable and Accessible Delivery Program. This program is a methodology that helps organizations to define and embed inclusion and accessibility into strategic planning, daily operation, and organizational culture through facilitated self-reflection. And we had all of our departments represented in the 2-day sessions to assist in this process. The lead executive summary is provided in Appendix B and helped us begin to create the plan that you see before you this evening. The DDSB Accessibility Plan is committed to providing services, employment, and learning and working environments that center Indigenous rights, human rights, and equity. The Accessibility Plan upholds the principles and responsibilities under the Human Rights Code and the AODA, Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. This plan also upholds the principles and responsibilities in the DDSB Indigenous Education Policy, our Human Rights, Anti-Discrimination and Anti-Racism Policy, and our Safe and Respectful Workplace and Harassment Prevention Policy. The plan is provided in Appendix A. It includes the objectives, purpose, and guiding principles for the plan, and the plan will be shared on the DDS website as well as shared with all stakeholders. An annual status report will be provided each year on the implementation of the plan, and I will let Lisa speak a bit more about the plan itself.
Thank you, Heather, and through you, Chair Thatcher. The plan, as you see, is organized by 5 AODA standards, those being information and communication, employment, transportation, design of public spaces, and customer service. The pending standard of universal design for learning has also been included in our plan. So within each of the standards, the DDSB has itemized our current successes, and we've then also included an overall goal and those key strategies that are going to support that goal. And for each of the strategies, there's an implementation year indicated, but we also recognize the work is really going to be ongoing, and it may take more than 1 year to complete. An annual status report will be completed and will provide updates on the implementation of each of the key strategies that are noted. And the plan overall is composed of 10 overall goals. The plan itself was created with input and feedback from all departments, as Heather mentioned, and a final review was completed by the Accessibility Working Group. That Accessibility Working Group has representation from each of the departments across the district. And we will also be providing updates and recommendations to support how best to implement the accessibility plan, as well as any additional requirements that come forward from the AODA. The Accessibility Working Group will also ensure that all compliance reporting is completed as required by the ministry. So at this time, we'll take any questions as well related to the report that was brought before you.
Thank you, Lisa. Are there any questions for Lisa or Heather, Superintendent Mundy? Go ahead, Trustee Lundquist.
Thank you. I don't have a question. I just want to make an observation. So I was excited to see this because I often think that one of the equity pieces that gets ignored often is around differently abled peoples and ableist language and whatnot. So I think this is really welcome. I think it does a good job of incorporating the law and going a little bit further by recognizing some of the policies that we've worked on and adopted that are frankly supplementary to law. But one of the things that I would like to see us address, and I think I've said this a dozen times during my term, and my term is coming to an end, so I'm going to say it one last time, is the way that we use language in this board. And I would like to see a real commitment to that now and before I leave. And I say that because even today I've heard people talk about, not in this meeting though, just to be clear, so I'm not coming at anybody, but we talk about things in very specific ways and we don't realize the power of the language that we use sometimes. So when we talk about courses, and we talk about university courses versus college courses, for example, we talk about going down, like dropping, you know, and that there's a lot of that language in education and a lot of it in our board and in our schools. And even things that are much more casual, right? Like it's crazy, or like there's just a lot of language that we use and we haven't really examined the way we use language. And I actually think it is one of those things that is terribly powerful in perpetuating barriers. And so I recognize this document isn't about that, but I think it's an important piece that needs to be considered when we're applying the principles in this document to the students and the families in our board. So I want to say thank you for the work on this. I think it's terribly important, but I do think on the ground level, we have some really simple work we could do that would make student life and staff life really much better. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lundquist. Superintendent Mundy, did you have anything to add? No? So thank you, Lisa and Heather, for the report. The protocol for the OPSBA report then, which has my name attached to it, the protocol would be for me to turn the gavel over to Trustee Templeton. But first, I'm going to go to Trustee Lowry. I see that she may just have a comment or a question.
I just have a comment on the accessibility plan. And I'm just wondering, when I read through it and I'm taking a look at identify and remove architectural physical barriers, sometimes we're led too much when we're talking about challenges. We're looking at the physical challenges and we overlook the what I'm going to call invisible disabilities, if I may. For example, brain injury. Again, I'm the mother of a son who suffered a catastrophic brain injury, and my journey with him, trying to find suitable accommodations, was incredibly frustrating. So I'm wondering whether in this document there might be a way of being more inclusive in the language and who we're talking about when we're talking about accessibility. Thank you.
I really appreciate the comment, and we'll certainly look. I think we hope that through some of the universal design section would encompass that around how we're being inclusive of all the needs, staff and student, but we'll certainly take the feedback and review to make sure that that's clear.
Trustee Lowry? Anything additional?
No.
Supplemental? No. Okay. Trustee Templeton, would you be able to take the meeting? No, I'm just going to make the report, but I'm just going to turn the gavel over to you.
Can I get your report for OPSBA, Chair Thatcher?
Thank you, Trustee Templeton. I just have a very brief report tonight. Jane Klassen-Janinga is the new regional chair of Central East. She indicated that there won't be a regional meeting this fall due to the election. Also, that plans are currently underway for the Public Education Symposium, that is PES, to take place in January. I hope to have more information to share with you after the September 30th Board of Directors meeting. That is my report.
Are we going to do the November 15th?
Yes. Chair Morton reminds me that I believe it's the Minister of Education who is interested in our feedback with regards to continuing the hybrid meetings. And so through you, Chair Templeton, we're wondering if we could have some discussion around extending the hybrid meetings from November 15th to an undetermined date. I know Chair Morton will be happy to take down your comments so that she can pass them along. Just wondering if there are any comments around that. So the question is, should we continue with the hybrid meetings beyond the November 15th established date? And I'm going to call on Trustee Crawford. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just thinking that would be a question that we'd have to discuss at a board meeting anyway, wouldn't it? Even if we have some discussion here, it can't be decided except at a board meeting?
Yeah, Trustee Crawford, we brought it to standing so that we could have some discussion around it, and then we'd certainly be happy to put that on the next board agenda.
Okay, that's fine. So my comments on it, that I would be in favor of extending it. Thank you.
Okay. I believe that Trustee Lundquist is first, and then Trustee Edwards.
I'm okay either way.
No, go ahead, you were first.
So I understand that this is the ministry asking for our view of it, and I'm happy to say I'm in support of whatever. I won't be here, so it is what it is. But I want to confirm that our bylaws actually provide that, because I think they do. And so I recognize that one is about the province and what is happening, but I don't know what our bylaws say about that, because
It's a good question.
I have a vague recollection that it's addressed in our bylaws in some way. And I
I'm
would
wondering if
not
Council
like to speak
Cotter
in contradiction of those.
Give us some feedback on that.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Thatcher. So our bylaws do incorporate the provisions of electronic meetings under the regulations that allow for participation. So it's really a question of our bylaws and the let's call them the non-pandemic normal regulations allow for electronic participation of individual members from time to time, but they do require physical presence. In the normal non-pandemic times, they do require physical presence of the chair, at least one additional member of the board, and the director or designate. So I think that's really the key, and that would also be potentially around physical presence of members as well. But I'd have to reserve a comment on that latter point, because electronic participation may always count. I'd have to look at the Education Act on that. But I think it really deals with the requirements that there be those 3 individuals physically present in the board office.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Trustee Edwards.
Yeah, I would say that the ministry has changed the regulation because of COVID, had changed the regulation in order to allow for basically people not attending in person, and including not having everybody in the boardrooms. So that has an impact on our bylaws as well. My comment is that as Trustee Lundquist has said, that COVID isn't over; it's still very much present. I think we have to be flexible, and we have to be in that environment where we're flexible. And it also allows for trustees, because I know several around the table did participate in board meetings, even if they were very, very ill at home, and it allowed them to have that opportunity to attend if they could. So from my perspective, it should be flexible. I mean, trustees should be present if they can, but if the environment or the fall persists and COVID persists, I think we need that flexibility.
Thank you, Trustee Edwards. Any additional comments? I'm not sure that we need to go any further with this tonight. Councillor Cotter, could I ask for input?
Sorry, could you
What's
repeat
the
the question?
question?
Yes, please, sorry.
Yes, what's the question?
I was engaged in a sidebar here.
I believe that what I'm saying is that we were just asked to get some feedback on this matter, and I'm wondering if it would be agreeable by everyone here if we just asked if there were any additional comments, that those could be sent to Chair Morton, and that we could then take a look at adding this to the agenda for board at the end of the month.
Yeah, I think certainly I would defer to the director in terms of how best to proceed with that. I could certainly provide input on the relevant provisions of our bylaws and how we've applied that.
That would be appropriate. Thank you. Director Marsh, any comments?
Thank you. Not to presuppose that you won't put it on the board agenda, I think the request was because the current exception to the provincial legislation expires on November 15th. And so I think the input was around provincial legislation, not necessarily our bylaws. And so I'm not sure there was anyone expressing a contrary view in terms of the need for flexibility, and I wonder if that's sufficient, given that it was an informal request by the Minister of Education to give input. So I'm just wondering, from agenda management, happy to go with however you both think we should, but you may already have what you need in terms of the request from the Minister.
We could just see if there's a general consensus and no objection. I'll go to Trustee Lundquist. Go ahead, Nikki.
So I think that makes sense. But I did want to say that the reason I think our bylaws are relevant are because they actually impart a bit of flexibility into this process, which I think is actually supportive of people of diverse needs, frankly. So whether they're ill or they have chronic illness or they're whatever's happening, family status issues, whatever. And so I don't see, we've demonstrated that this is an effective way of engaging. And so I think it's highly supportable, and I would prefer to have people have some degree of flexibility, because I do think if we're talking about all of these things that we talk about in terms of flexibility, mental health, all of the rest, then providing people with a bit of opportunity to participate when they otherwise might not be able to seems to me to be a wise decision.
Thank you for that. So Director Marsh has just indicated that the Minister of Education is just looking for some general feedback from us, and so I'm just wondering, would there be any objection to passing along the comments this evening, that we would be favorable and support extending that from November 15th, from the deadline that we have at present, November the 15th. Chair Morton?
Thank you, and through you, Vice Chair Thatcher. I just want to make it clear that the request did not come from Minister Lecce. It came from Rusty Hick of OPSBA. And Rusty is saying that in discussion with the Minister, they are going to go to OPSBA for feedback. And in order to provide that feedback, OPSBA is coming to all the boards in Ontario saying, are you in favor or are you not in favor of that extension?
So the feedback is going through OPSBA to Minister Lecce?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up, Chair Morton. I see no objection. I see no objection here, so I'll just say that is my report. Trustee Templeton.
I turn the chair or gavel back over to you.
All right. So as there is no further business, I would like to adjourn this meeting. Oh, sorry, Chair Morton?
Thank you. And through you, Chair Thatcher, I would like to draw your attention to the correspondence. In particular, there are 3 letters on pages 49 to 53. The first one is from the town of Ajax, the second is from the township of Brock, and there is a third letter as well. All 3 of these letters are dealing with the Amber Alert system. And that is in regards to the death of one of our students, 11-year-old Draven Graham of Brock Township, died in June of this year. I think that this is something that we need to address at board meeting. So I'm just drawing your attention to those 3 letters, and I would like you to reflect on those prior to board meeting on September the 19th. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Morton. So, as there is no further business, I would like to adjourn this meeting. Good evening, everyone.
Good night, everyone.